Yes, we're just gonna go live like we're already ready. I need, do you use StreamYard?
Uh, I've been on StreamYard a bunch of times.
Okay, because this thing for me sometimes it go private directly when it goes live.
Oh,
So it's on lock.
I've been on.
Sorry, it's locked, and I have to go change the setting every time to public.
That's a pain.
It's annoying, very annoying, but it's all right.
That's okay.
I know now.
We're gonna fix that glitch when we're done with our live.
Yeah, I know. I told Fatten, like I said, we got to figure that out and see why it's doing that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, I'm so excited to have you on here with me.
Thank you
Thank
for having
you.
me on.
I know we didn't even get no prep time to talk, but I wasn't worried about it because I know how to freestyle really good. And
We
I
don't
know,
need prep talk.
yes. And I love you. I know you're a
Yeah.
supporter of me, and I appreciate you supporting me and loving on me over the
For
years.
years,
And if people don't
years.
know, and people don't know, like we haven't even met. We've never met in person. And that's the great thing about internet, right? The internet and being an internet entrepreneur, the people you get to meet, it's like you know them, right? It's like you know them. So I've seen you growing, right? You've seen me grow. Like, so we've been able to support each other on this journey of entrepreneurship and turn, what you were developing and creating into an agency and developing your services. So I'm just so excited to have you on here today. And I know a lot of people are interested in learning more about this because podcasting has been around for a while, of course,
Mhm.
right? And I remember when I started back in 2017, the first thing I did was a podcast.
Yes.
It was called The Future is Female. I remember it's called The Future is Female. I had this old equipment that I rented from, it seems so long ago, but it was only 2017, okay? From the studio, and it was podcast equipment. I don't know, it was like this little machine, and then they had the microphones with the wires attached, connected, and all that. Like we were holding the microphone, I was passing the microphone on my couch.
The audio was trash.
Right. I was passing the microphone to all the women, but it was a start, right? And it was innovative. And I was like, okay, but what I still wasn't I was still trying to figure out my business still. And I said, okay, once I got the services, and it's hard, it's hard for entrepreneurs to balance the podcast, servicing their clients, right? And all the administrative stuff that comes along with a podcast, to run a podcast. And this is why your company is so important. So tell people what you do, who you are, all those amazing things.
So thank you. My name is Bethany Hawkins. I am CEO and founder of Crackers and Soup. And you say 2017. I started this in 2019, and that feels like 8 billion years ago
Right.
because there was been such a change since I started in 2019 to where we are now because of the pandemic. People went, it should be called podcast pandemic. That's what it should be
Yeah.
called now, the podcast pandemic,
Right.
because that's what happened when everybody was just sitting at home. They were like, oh, I can create a podcast too. Or, oh, I've discovered podcasts. So,
Yeah.
what Crackers and Soup does is we assist people with launching their podcast as well as podcast management, as well as coaching. And I love what you had said about kind of struggling to juggle all of the balls in regards to podcasting as well as your business, because what I do as a podcast coach and what I do when we assist people in launching their podcasts, we teach you how to integrate
Mm-hmm.
so that juggle isn't really a necessity, because you can refer your clientele, you can refer your potential clients or customers to where you address that pain point that they are bringing up to you in your podcast. Then, without even have to doing a lot of heavy lifting, they can develop that know, like, and trust factor with you. So when they do decide they are ready to take it to the next level and work with you one-on-one or in a group, you don't even
Mm-hmm.
have to make yourself fabulous. They already know that you're fabulous. So
Right.
if you do your podcast correctly, anybody can have a podcast. All you have to
Right.
do to have a podcast really is just have audio.
Yes.
I'm gonna tell y'all the big
Give the
fives that
secrets.
you have
Give
to
the
do.
secrets.
The
Yes.
big secrets.
Okay.
All you have to do is you have to have audio. You have to have a title for your podcast. You have to have cover art that meets the standards.
Yes.
You have to have a podcast description, and you have to have a show notes. That's all you need to have a podcast. However, comma, you didn't hear me say you have a good or a great or an award-winning podcast.
Right.
You just got a
That's
podcast.
the basics. The basics.
That's like the nitty-gritty of having a podcast.
Right. So that means that anybody could get started at any time, right? And I think that number one thing that I like to talk about is, overthinking, right? We will overthink something, an idea to death, until we figure out we got the master plan that's going to crack the internet, right? And everybody, you're going to have all these millions of audience, followers and all that. And we think that, we have to think it out like that. But just to get started, just go, right? These are the basics. So what would be next? What do you recommend after that, right? After the basics?
So I would recommend looking at what you talk about on social media regularly, and look at who's responding and how they're responding. So if you're posting things regularly on a particular topic and you just hear crickets, you may not want to engage about that in your first 4 episodes.
Right.
But if there is a topic where there is a lot of engagement, and even if there's kind of a lot of dissension, if there's a lot of back and forth conversation, that's the one that after you introduce yourself, I always say episode 1 needs to be an introduction. People need to know who the heck you are and why they should trust you. Are you just Joe Schmo, like someone moved the rock and you climbed out and you were like, I'm an expert? Or like, do you have the street cred where people are just calling you a thought leader and you're like, oh, wait a second, I guess I am? So, so it's always nice to get that connection with your audience in the first episode, saying who you are, why you're doing this, and why it's important to you.
Yeah.
And the second episode, that's when you're going to want to jump into things and pain points and conversations that you have many times in the body of your business. So if you were coming to me in regards to your podcast, you're like, Bethany, I'm kind of running out of ideas for the Powerhouse podcast. What do I do? I would say, ma'am, first off, you will never run out of ideas ever, because you are in so many different things.
Yeah.
And talking to people about having multiple streams of income should be highlighted in your podcast because you do that so exceptionally well. And in creating a business, as you know, people get caught up on that one service. Have to get clients for that one service. Have to get clients for that one service. Well, when there's a recession or people don't need assistance in that one service, SOL.
Yeah, exactly.
So having those topics that you regularly discuss or that clients consistently bring to you that you're constantly answering, those are going to be like the first 4 episodes. It's going to be you introducing yourself. It's going to be pain point number 1, number 2, and number 3. And you're going to have a call to action.
And the pain points for your target audience. And I think that that's something that in the beginning of the popularity of podcasting, people weren't focused on drawing in your audience through the podcast, right? It was just like, let me start a podcast and start talking about anything, right? Not anything. It's still maybe empowerment, but there was no strategy to call in the clients, to connect with them. So the topics of, like you were saying, the topics of your podcast need to speak to your audience, right? Need to speak to your audience. So they're like, okay, let me go down the rabbit hole and watch all her episodes, all their episodes, and then get on the link and maybe sign up and book a call with them, because in the notes and on their platform, it's going to direct me, or even in the outro, and we'll get to that later in some of the, the technical parts of a podcast, the outro is going to direct me to go somewhere.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. So your podcast should be directing people to find you. Right. And to work with you. So you need to make sure that your content is speaking to them, and not just to you. Right. And I've learned this lesson, and you probably have in entrepreneurship, is we think we know what people want to hear. Right. We're like, people should listen to this. People need to know this. But at the end of the day, we have to listen to our clients. We have to listen to our audience, right? Tell me why that's so important for us to really pay attention and not just put out content just because we feel it's important, but what are some maybe ways that you help your clients figure out what the need is from their from their audience to really set up their topics for their podcast? Or even the
one
name
of
of
my
it.
I love the title of the podcast conversation.
Yes.
And before I get into the
Okay.
title of your podcast, one of my geniuses is to hear what you're saying without you telling me what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to decipher what you truly is your why is what I can usually extrapolate out of my clients without them really even knowing their why.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I hit it, they're like, yes, that's why I want to do this podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So treating your podcast not like an influencer where you're just trying to get likes, but as a business owner where you're trying to get clientele.
Yes.
Is going to differentiate you from other podcasters as well as how you treat your podcast. If you're treating your podcast like a business owner, you're going to treat your podcast like a business.
Mm-hmm.
If you are treating your podcast like a side piece, you're going to treat your podcast like a side piece. She gets some loving every now and then.
Yes.
But she ain't the main chick.
We see that because I've done it. So I know. I've done it myself. So I know. But you got to be consistent, right? You got to be consistent with your podcast. I mean, I can imagine if I kept that podcast in 2017 and kept it going, I can imagine where that would be right now, right? It's still aligned with what I do. The future is female. Like, I don't know. I was everywhere at that time. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
But it wasn't meant for you then.
Right, exactly. Everything happens for a reason. I definitely believe that.
Yeah.
So, so let's talk about the title of the podcast.
Talking about titles are very important because if I was going to name the title of my podcast, the Bethany Hawkins podcast, ain't nobody know who Bethany Hawkins is. Like, why would they even listen to that? I would have listened to that.
I'd be like, girl, nobody knows who you are. You better give it a different name.
Like, even Oprah has Soulful Sunday.
Right.
Oprah. And she's Oprah.
Yes.
She Harpo.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Tell the people, please. Tell the people.
So when people name it after themselves, I do, as the kids say, bombastic side eye. Because you're gonna be spending your entire time explaining in an elevator pitch what your podcast is about.
Yes.
Exactly. So if you are naming your podcast and you're using it for a means for your business, for marketing purposes, you're going to either want to use a name that plays off of your business. So there is some sort of correlation there, or you're going to want to name it kind of like a pain point for a lot of your business clients. So the Powerhouse podcast, building a profitable movement. Yeah. You know exactly what this podcast is about. It's going to talk about money.
Yes.
It's going to talk about how we move in the vicinity of a business.
Yes.
And it's going to talk about how to build on the formation of that business.
Yes.
So titles are really important. You're also going to want to take and this is what kind of differentiates my company from others. We look to the ends of the earth to see if the podcast title that you've come up with has been exhausted and used by other podcasts. Right. And the reason why that is because, the WWD, World Wide Web.
Yes.
You type a name up that just says the podcast, 8 quadrillion podcasts are going to come up with the same name.
Right.
It's not going to be special. It's not going to be unique. It's going to be really hard for your listeners to find you.
Yeah.
So if you have a podcast name that you chose that maybe one other person has it, that's okay. I still don't like to use it because they could be in the middle of trademark, registering, copywriting that. And then they're going to hit you with thank you so much for having this up for a year and a half. You got to take your ish down.
Yeah.
And legally, you got to take it down.
Yes, exactly. So you really have to do the research on the name. right? You really have to, and the name has to have some purpose behind it. Right when you read it, you got to be able to be like, oh, that's what she's going to be talking about. You want it to be clear. You don't want, like you said, the Chandra Brooks podcast, like, and, like, okay, who are you? Okay, let me go Google you. Okay, you're going to make them have to work for that. But you want somebody to be able to read the podcast and be able to know, okay, that's what they're going to be talking about, is clear, and attract them. You got to get them right away, right? When they see the title of your podcast, you got to get them right away. So you also have to make sure it aligns with your brand. Correct. And what you do, right? That's what I went back and forth on the title for this podcast. I changed it a few times already. But that's the beauty of when you have your own business and your own thing, you could change it, right? It's okay. You ain't gonna die. I promise. You won't die if you change the name of your podcast. You adjust things a little bit. Really, people barely notice, right? When you do that stuff, like, just don't do it a lot, right? Just don't do it a lot, and do it often. Try to be as consistent as possible. But with your company, Bethany, I think what I really love is that you guys help with everything when it comes to the podcast, right? And honestly, being on the internet streets for a while now, right? I haven't seen many companies that do what you guys do. So talk about everything, intricate thing that you guys do for an entrepreneur like me that wants to have a podcast but doesn't have the time to do all those things, right? So just talk about what you guys offer.
We do all of the things. So for our launch is our most expensive because it's our longest package. We say from the date of hire to the date of your first episode dropping is going to take between 8 to 12 weeks. And the reason why it takes that long is because we don't have anything. Mm-hmm. So we are taking the time to develop that relationship. And that's why I vet who our clientele is so well, because we are going to get intimate. I'm going to know all your business. I'm going to know your family business, because life be lifing.
Yes. All the time.
If something happens, I want to make sure that you feel comfortable enough with me that we have that rapport that you can say, I'm sorry, I don't have the bandwidth to record this week. Can we do it for next week? Of course. And we have that wiggle room. Right. So it's not like, oh my God, you hired us and it's going to take 4 weeks and we have to get it out. So we talk about your why. We break down how you want to show up in your podcast. Do you want to have an interview style podcast? Do you want to have a solo? Do you want to have a combination of both? Do you want to I have a client who's in her 70s who uses her podcast as an opening to her memoir. She has a memoir coming out. So her podcast is stories that are embodied within her memoir. And she has, I can't look, her download numbers are wild. Wow. And she only has 5 episodes dropped.
Wow. Amazing.
And that is the power of saying, I have a podcast.
Yes. Well, you could do it around different things like that. I love that. Share more of those, like different clients that you have, that are unique, because I think people feel like they have to have a business to have a podcast.
No, right. It doesn't matter what your genre is that you are trying to sell. It is bringing awareness to a large audience. So this particular client, wherever she goes, she has a tennis group and she has, brunch with the ladies. Wherever she goes, she shares that she has this podcast coming out. We also have a client who has different segments within the body of her podcast. So it's kind of like a TV show where we create transitional music from their podcast music selection, their intro and the outro, which we help them with that as well when we do the launch process. And everybody knows, all of her listeners know, when this music happens, the next segment is coming up. So we have clients that are sisters who are almost a decade apart, and talking about their experiences being a decade apart in this crazy thing called life. Yeah. So education is very different. The internet experience is very different. Dating is very different. So it has been a beautiful thing to see this podcast, because their relationship has gotten a lot closer because of them being able to talk about things, and they disagree a lot.
Yeah.
But having the opportunity to come back, and it allows their audience to have open and frank conversations with other people.
Right.
So we I shouldn't just say, just don't do business podcasts.
Yeah.
We want you to think outside of the box on how you can make your podcast uniquely you. And then we challenge you to just go all in on that. How is this going to be your whole GM?
Yeah.
And I also remind our clients regularly, their first season is for learning.
Yes.
It's for tweaking, it's for tinkering, it's for understanding the process.
Yes.
Season 2 is for implementing. Season 3 is for the money, honey.
I love that. I love that because people want quick and fast success all the time. And as you know, right, as entrepreneurs, I've been telling people this, some of my closest friends these last couple of days. I don't know how many people have come up to me or have said, Chandra, have you hit 4 million yet? Chandra, I know you're a millionaire, huh? I know you're a millionaire. And I'm looking at them like, I don't know what you're reading on these internet streets because no, I haven't hit that yet. I'm going to, and I'm close. I said, but I'm not. I'm not. And I'm just being real, right? I'm being real because I've been working at this for a long time, right? People want to become instant millionaires, but I tell you, I will get there very soon because I've been putting in the work for a long time. You are not going to step into these internet streets and become an instant success. Your podcast isn't going to become an instant success. So you need to do the work, right? So I love that you're very transparent with your clients and you're telling them to test it out. And just like business, and you know this, right? The first year you got to work out the kinks and you got to figure this shit out, right? And the second is, okay, we got the wheels are turning. We know what to do. We know what works. We know what doesn't. Now let's monetize in the third season, right? And that's just like business, right? To get it right. Yeah, you're going to make some money. You're going to get some traction. You're going to get some partnerships. You're going to get some clients, right? In the first couple seasons, but you have to get this right? And before you can really take off. Right. So I love that you educate your clients on that because it's so important that people understand the process, that it takes time to build something great. It just doesn't happen overnight. Right. Absolutely. And I know that could be hard when you're dealing with clients too. Right.
It is. And also, if you really know who you are and what your podcast is about, it is very easy to get sponsors, unlike the sponsors that you think you should be getting. So for our podcast is it's gone into hiatus right now because we are just too busy. We just can't. Yeah, but we had a sponsor before we even had one episode recorded.
Talk about that.
So my podcast is called Chatting Over Chowder. It is myself. It is my coworker who does all of the graphics. So if you look at anything Crackers and Soup associated, she has done that. That's how. Yes. And she's, no diss to Canva.
Yeah.
But when clients work with us, yes, they get a educated with a degree graphic designer for their cover art.
Got it.
Because it is an extension of their brand.
Yes.
So we look at your podcast as a brand. So we're going to represent you in your graphics as such, and your show notes as such, and your audio quality as such. We are going to take that and heighten it. And that's the benefit of hiring a company like mine.
Yes.
So our podcast is about 2 minority women talking to other women in the podcasting industry about what podcasts they listen to while eating super chowder.
I love it.
If you cannot describe your podcast that succinctly, yes, you got to go back to the drawing board.
Thank you. Yeah. And having that unique thing, right? Like people like that. People like that fun thing, like eating chowder or drinking cocktails or doing something, right? Just the action to it, just bringing something different and unique to your podcast that nobody else has, right? Is a good touch.
So, and if look at what you and your friends do on like a Friday night or when you all get together.
Yeah.
And try to incorporate that and embody that, if not for the entirety of every episode, maybe one episode a month.
Yeah.
So that it's something fun and different that breaks up the monotony.
Yeah.
And not only do your listeners look forward to that, but you look forward to that as well.
Yes, exactly. I know what I try to do, like with mine. I used to have Jacqueline, and she was my business partner and part of it, but we're not working together anymore. But me and her were doing tips and sips, right? We had our drinks and whatever. But now that it's just me, I try to bring what it's really like to be in a coaching session with me, right? That it's just like the experience you're going to get on the interview. You're going to be empowered. It's going to be a whole lot of energy. We're going to laugh. We're going to have a good time. We're going to say what we need to say. It's not going to be formal. It's not going to be stiff, right? We're going to have a good time. So you got to have some unique factor to your podcast. And you brought up sponsorships. And I think a lot of people, they want to monetize their podcast, right, too, as well. So do you have any tips or a secret on how to find their first sponsor for
I
a
do.
podcast? Okay.
I want you to, my first tip has nothing to do with other businesses. It has to do with yourself.
Yes.
I
Okay.
want you to rethink about how you view sponsorships. Because if being on this podcast gets me a client, you just sponsored me.
Okay.
If me being on this podcast gets you a client, I've just sponsored you.
Right.
So showing up in your podcast and you getting speaking opportunities, speaking engagements, if you get an opportunity to join a summit, if you get an opportunity to join a panel or to speak as an expert somehow, some way, that's a sponsorship. Any money that's going into your business pocket because of your podcast is a sponsor.
Okay, that's great. Good perspective.
If you are talking to a company and they want to not give you monetary value, but it's something that you utilize regularly, like my microphone. And they say, I'm going to give you a percentage off of your next microphone. If you talk about my microphone, that is a sponsorship.
There you go.
Because you are not going to have to dish out that money for that thing. If you regularly talk about how much you love the company that makes your hats, and they give you your hats for free.
Yeah.
So that you can share them with every single guest that's been on your podcast. And then your guests are asked, what's your hat about? And they tell them about you. You now have a potential client. That is the sponsor. So having said all that, because I really want to break down the idea that you have to have, like Quip or Better Health or
right. Yeah, and they got to be dropping you checks, right? Right away. Nobody's gonna drop your check. Let's be real, right? Nobody's gonna drop you check if you are a new podcast with no followers and nobody that's gonna bring money in their pockets. They're not gonna drop you a check right away. They might give you a discount. They might hook you up like you just talked about right now, but they're not gonna be dropping you checks unless you're Oprah, right? Maybe that's about it.
But there could be people who drop you checks that are your people. If you are regularly going to the same coffee shop, and again, this comes with rapport and connection. And Sammy, the owner, and you say, hey, every day I come in for my coffee at the Drop Cafe, I have a podcast. What is your marketing brand? Do you consider podcasts as a marketing strategy? Do you have money in your marketing income to sponsor me for a season? And not only will I talk about how every day I get this coffee, but now podcasts are considered visual instead of just audio.
Yes.
So during every episode, I don't even have to talk about it. I will just have my coffee mug right there.
And we see that on TV all the time, right?
All the time. TV, product placement.
All the podcasts, right? If they have a Pepsi, that Pepsi sponsoring. If you can see Pepsi on the screen, Pepsi is giving that podcast or that show money, right? Anything. It could be the Microsoft computer, could be the Apple computer. If you could see that logo, they are giving money in some form or fashion, right?
Absolutely. Okay. So the next time somebody's watching a movie and my nephew, he was in marketing and he actually got me like, I'm so keened in on it now. And I'm like, Eric, but people are just talking in their kitchen. There will be like a brand just sitting in the background.
Yeah. Mhm.
Not honed in on it. They're not eating it. They're not
They didn't
engaging
mention
with
it.
it.
They're not
They
talking
didn't
about it.
mention it. They're opening the refrigerator. There's particular brands that are facing the exact camera. That could be you.
Yes,
You
exactly.
could have that brand. And
Yes.
even if you wanted to do a logo in the corner of the screen,
Mhm.
that is sponsorship.
Yes. Yes.
And so start looking at what you naturally gravitate towards, what you naturally purchase, who you naturally engage with, and reach out to them and see if they have a marketing budget.
Mm.
And don't give a specific on what you want them to pay you, because you never know what their budget is going to be.
Yeah, we got Veronica. She's one of my past clients, and she said this is some serious drops of info. Her eyes are being opened right now. And Dr.
Veronica,
Alexa
thank you.
just said, "Good afternoon, ladies." And Anarita said, "Hi, Coach Chandra Brooks. Hi, ladies. Thank you for joining us." But yeah, this is some good information because people, like I said, people overthink this process, and it doesn't have to be so complicated,
It
right?
doesn't.
We
It
can
doesn't.
all have a podcast. We can all have sponsorships. We
Mhm.
can all do this, right? And it's important to get our voice. It's just another outlet to put our information out there to the world. Is there anything else you think that people that are hesitant with starting, what would you tell somebody who was saying, Bethany, I don't know what to do. I'm hesitant. I don't even know if I'm good enough to have a podcast. Or I know what's a good question. Some people are so nervous, right? It's hard for them to come on camera like this, right?
Mhm.
And to interview. They're like, I'm not a good interviewer, but I want to have a podcast. And everybody's saying I should have one. What do you tell clients that say, I think I need to have one, but I'm a little shy behind the camera? What do you do with them?
I listen to that verbiage. Everybody says I should have one. Don't have
Mhm.
one.
Yeah,
That's not a reason to have one.
there you go.
If you are
Mhm.
saying to yourself
Mhm.
regularly, I really want to have a podcast.
Yeah, love it.
I really want to share this information.
Mhm.
I loathe the way my voice sounds.
Mhm.
That I can work with.
Mhm.
That we can talk. We can figure something out.
Right.
But if I have somebody coming to me, a la Legalian,
Yeah.
I think I should have a podcast. Everybody's doing it. Everybody says I should. I already know. You're giving to the Crackers and Soup like donation fund because you're going to ghost me.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not going to do the work that I tell you to do because
You're not going to do the work
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's a lot of work up front.
Yes.
Once you get into the rhythm, you're Gucci, you're golden.
Yeah.
But I need you. We do so much for you in launching, but
Yeah.
I need you walking with me
Mm-hmm.
along
Yeah.
the way.
Right.
I'll get you there, but
Yeah.
I need you to show up.
Girl, yes, I totally agree. Don't do things just because everybody else is doing them. You can do other things. You don't have to do a podcast just because everybody else is doing it. You definitely don't you want to do it because you have something to share with the world, right? You have information and you're like, I just want to get it out there and I just want to put it out there. Don't just do it just because everybody else is doing it. I hope y'all are hearing us, okay? Don't just do it because everybody's doing it. You think that's going to be your next best thing to get you all the clients. Trust me, it's not. You can make a whole lot of money without a podcast, and I promise you. So only do it if you really desire to get a message out to the world and you feel like you have more to share. All right.
Because whether you're paying a company like mine to help you or whether you're doing it yourself, you're investing. You're either investing in time or money.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And let's be real, time you can't get back.
Time is money.
Time is money.
When you're an entrepreneur, time is money. You don't have time to waste. Dr. Alexa said, love her. I know, Dr. Alexa. That's why I have her on the show. Okay? That's why I have her on the show. That's why she's my first guest since I relaunched. Okay? There's a reason why I have Bethany on here. Right? The energy. And she's hilarious. And I knew I was going to have a good time. And she was going to drop a whole lot of gems. And she's a pro at podcasts. She gets called to speak at different conferences, right? Tell me the different conferences that you spoke on when it comes to podcasting.
I have spoken at, first off, thank you, Dr. Alex Rosa. That's so sweet. Firstly, I've spoken at Afrin Audio. I've spoken at Pod. Oh my gosh, you're supposed to those Pod.
Sorry, put you on the spot.
I know. I'm like, what?
Come on.
I got to pull out my website and be like featured on.
I know, right? I couldn't tell you either. I couldn't, and that's a good problem to have.
That is a great problem to have. I've written for magazines, Solacy. Next month I am actually less than a month. I'm speaking at She Podcast. I'm talking about how to create a business out of podcasting. So if you truly love podcasting and you want it as a side hustle, or if you want it as your main gig and pays your mortgage like me, and you have team members, and you want team members, I'm talking about that. So yeah, I've spoken on a handful of platforms. Just Bethany Hawkins, Google me. You'll find me in there.
I love it. Just Google me.
Just Google me.
Hey, I do the same thing. I'm like, you want to know more about me? Just Google me. Put my name.
Google me, darling.
You'll find it.
Go to crackersandsoup.com. I'm there.
You'll find all the information there. I love it. It. You're amazing.
Okay, total squirrel. Train of thought. Lost it.
Okay.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about just giving advice, to people.
Oh, yeah. So if you absolutely want to do a podcast, but you don't like the way that your voice sounds, or you don't feel like you're good at interviewing, there are a couple of things that you can do. Number one, you can pinpoint what is your ease in communication, and by that I mean, is it easier for you to talk one-on-one with somebody, or is it easier for you to talk into a microphone and just share your gems and your genius? Because if it is easier for you to talk into a microphone and share your gem and genius, that's what you're going to want to do. You don't need a 45 to 60-minute podcast.
Yeah.
If you can share that ish in 15 minutes, share the ish in 15 minutes. Who are you stretching it out for? You don't got to be all that. You don't got to do all that.
Right.
There are a lot of podcasts that are motivational, just literally 1-minute podcasts.
Yeah.
Pop in, inspirational thought, hop out, have a great day.
Yeah. And I've seen them like 15 minutes, right? Like just some information in and out.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
If you feel better and you vibe off of other people's energy, which is what I do, I would be terrible at a solo podcast. It would literally be 5 seconds. Hi, I'm Bethany Hawkins. Have a great day. And then because I need somebody to
go back and forth with. Yeah.
So you need to know that about yourself. How do you better converse? How do you best share information? If you feel like you aren't a great interviewer, I just want to say that there are people who have talk shows that are terrible interviewers. And I know that we have mentioned some big celeb names. Some big celeb names aren't great interviewers. And here's why.
Yeah.
They don't listen.
Yes.
When you aren't listening and you aren't vibing with the person that you're speaking with, you interrupt them. You don't ask more compounding questions. You just move on to the next topic. It is and you can feel the energy is different.
You could feel it. That's happened to me. And they're not paying attention to what you're saying. They're like reading, or they're on their phone, or they're right. You're like, yes. And then they just go, they're not even paying attention to what you're saying. They're going off to the next question. So they're not building on top of that question. Right. So they're not paying attention. So you have to be a good listener. I totally agree. And you can't interrupt. I try to be a good interviewer. I don't know. How am I doing? Am I okay?
You're doing good. But also as I'm gonna throw us Black women under the bus. But that's how we cha-cha with each other, right? We're like, girl, like that,
having a good time. Having a good time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you are getting ready if you really want to interview people, my advice for the first 4 episodes where you were just doing interview style podcast, you're going to want to use those 4 people that you are most comfortable with for each episode.
Right.
Call up a person that you really know is super smart, really engaging, you want to have a great conversation with, and well. And here's a fun thing. The majority of podcasts are not live like this.
Yes.
You can always record your podcast. What makes a really great podcast guest and a really great podcast host is boundaries. So before you even hit record on that podcast episode, if you say to them, if I come to you with something that makes you uncomfortable or you don't want to talk to, please let me know. We can stop, we can regroup, and we can start again.
Right.
Or you can say as a host, I am so nervous. Coach Brooks, I don't even know if I can do this. I wanted to do this podcast. I hired this company. I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, what's going on? If I start looking uncomfortable, can you call me on it so I can pause?
Right.
And you can do that, and that is okay. Because ain't nobody gonna know as long as you edit that ish out. Like, ain't nobody gonna know. They'll be like, oh, that was so smooth.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be live. Yeah,
live.
So then you can go and edit it and fix it, and take out the things that you don't like. But that's a lot of work too, and I think that's another reason why people should hire companies like you, right, to help them, because you'll go help and edit that and help fix that and make all their worries go away if you need a podcast. Another thing I think that is new, and kind of new, I know when I first started podcasting, I didn't have an intro and an outro, right? And the intro and outro are important because your intro, and this is an intro is like, how long would a good intro be?
An intro should be less than 1 minute. So what there should be a music, it's called fade in. There should be some music fade in, which helps set the vibe of your podcast. So if your podcast is like, you're going to want to have, you're not going to want to have piano music, right? Yes.
Exactly.
If you know that you're wild, you're not going to want to have like elevator music.
Right.
You're going to want to have upbeat, just so your audience knows, like, this is the vibe. This is what we're going to get into. Right. So after you have that fade in music coming in, you're going to have your vocals, and you're going to have the music just underneath, just a little quieter. You're going to introduce yourself. First, you're going to talk about your podcast. Are you ready to build a profitable movement? Are you ready to build a powerhouse? And when I talk about a powerhouse, I mean your company. Are you ready to pay your mortgage? Are you ready to go to are you ready to pay Whole Foods with real foldable dollar bills? Because that's $8 trillion anyway. If you're ready to do all this podcast is for you. This is the Powerhouse podcast with Coach Andra Brooks. Hood it up, ready, go. And then you're going to have fade out music. And then you're going to start your podcast episode. So that's an intro. So the intro should be the same for every podcast for each episode.
Yes.
So in the intro as well, because people are kind of getting like hip to the jive of podcasts, you're going to want to do a call to action. Yes. You're going to want to say, you're going to love this episode, so you should follow me on Instagram.
Yes. Yeah.
In the intro.
Oh, okay.
More people are in the intro, because people are waiting to do that in the call to action in the outro. People aren't listening to the outro anymore.
Oh, Bethany. Okay. Now I got to go change my dang intro and outro, Bethany. But you're smart. That's smart. Because that's true. That is so damn true. Because I just did mine. I just redid it because we adjusted the name a little bit. So in my outro, I'm like, and if you want more information, go watch my masterclass on how to build money, power, and respect. Boom, like go to the link. But that's at the end. So I should be adding it to the beginning. Fatten, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to do my intro.
But you can keep the outro the same, because you're just gonna want to reiterate, and you can switch it up a little bit in your intro. You could be like, you know what the key of life is? Money, power, respect. Just switch it up a little bit.
Right.
But just to do a quick call to action, and if you are using your podcast for business purposes, please, for the love of Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Tom Cruise, whomever you believe in, talk about your damn business in your podcast in the body of the episode.
Hello.
In the body of the episode. Talk about your coaching program in the body of the episode. It doesn't have to be sleazy. It doesn't have to be addy. It can be, my client, just from working with me, just increased her podcast business clientele 5 times as much from when she started with me.
In the body of
the podcast episode.
Okay.
It can just be conversational.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be an ad insertion. It just should be naturally flowing. And that's an ad for your business right there that people don't feel icky about.
Right. Right. I love it. Let me see. I said ask questions. So I said, Dr. Alexa said, I do good with Q&A type, like unscripted people asking me questions, town hall style. That's what I do, Dr. Alexa. Like, I didn't send Bethany any questions today. I like to freestyle. That's how I roll in any interview that I do. Like, if you try to hit me up for questions, I'll be like, I don't do that, because I like to have a conversation. Right. But not everybody can do that. Right. Not everybody can do that. So sometimes you do need, and it's okay, is to have like a set of questions that, so you don't get off track, and you make sure you're hitting all the points that you want to hit, because sometimes you just get off track and you're like, damn, I forgot to talk about this. I forgot to ask her this. I forgot to ask her that. But I've been doing this for so long that I've been getting pretty good at it. But if you're just starting, you should have some type of notes to keep you on track. Would you agree?
Absolutely. What helps me is not just a standard set of questions, but bullets.
Mm-hmm.
I have bullets.
Yeah.
And what you can start doing if you're kind of nervous about hitting those topics as well as time constraints is do what's called a run of show.
Mm-hmm.
Is in like the first 2 minutes, that you're going to be introducing yourself. The first from minute 2 to 5, you're going to be introducing the particular topic. From point 5 to 7, you're going like hit this bullet and give yourself wiggle room for tangents. Because I went on a tangent here. I was like, and then I was like, oh, squirrel, what?
Yeah.
Oh, bring it back.
Right. Exactly.
So if you follow
run
along, a run of show, you could just follow along that pattern and that timeline, and then you'll get acclimated to the rhythm of your podcast.
Yes, I love it. Well, I think, Bethany, we can be on here for another couple hours, right? And just laugh and have a good time. But we've got jobs, right? We got work, we got businesses to run, we got kids, we got things to do. I know it's Friday, so we got to get things together for the weekend. But I'm so happy that I brought you on. The audience loves you, obviously, and people are going to continue to watch this probably throughout the next couple of weeks. This is actually the first episode we did live on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. Yes.
I popped your cherry.
Yes, you did. Yes, so you too. But because honestly, I've been thinking about moving to Instagram, but StreamYard doesn't go live on Instagram. But on Facebook, it's just been really, really, really slow. I don't know whether it's slowing down on Facebook. I don't know what's going on here. But we got to get out there, right, and into bigger audiences. But I really appreciate you. You gave so many gems here today. I think people are going to really move forward. Tell people how they can find you and how they can work with you, please.
Perfect. If you are planning on creating a podcast, starting your podcast, launching your podcast, dropping your podcast in September, you should hire me today, because it's going to take that time to get your episodes to where you want it to be, so that you can drop it and market it and shout it from the rooftops for the date of the drop. So you can, and we are accepting clients right now because a lot of my clients are on season break. So, so you can contact me at Crackers, CRACKERSNIN soup, SOUP.com. I'm on Instagram under B Crackers and Soup. I'm on LinkedIn under Bethany Hawkins. I'm all over these streets.
Google. Hello.
Google me.
Well, so go find Bethany and her company and get the help that you need to start your podcast. Bethany, thank you for offering all the gems. I love you, girl, and I always support you. Got your back, whatever you need. You guys go check her out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see y'all later. Take care. Bye-bye.